name is Gregory Lykov, and I'm joined here with my co-host Ofer Adar.
Hello, everybody. Today is November 4th. Happy Election Day, and polls are closing in several states within the next couple of hours. We're going to look in depth at the NYC mayoral election, we'll look at the gubernatorial, lieutenant governor, and attorney general elections within Virginia, and we'll also look at the gubernatorial race unfolding in New Jersey. So, lots to get into within those races. And to finish off the video, we'll discuss the untimely passing of Vice President Dick Cheney, who served under the George H.W. Bush administration. So let's get into the elections first and foremost, because they will give us a very good barometer of where the country's at going into 2026, of course.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get right into it. I mean, this election day is probably one of the most important election days in modern day American history. We have a race in New York City where there is a literal socialist candidate on the ballot who is, as of the polls right now, about to win the race. And we see that this socialist, jihadist, anti-Semite, communist, whatever else you want to call him, is winning the race. But something that a lot of people have forgot to mention is that he actually, before the election, before he started his campaign for mayor, he was a state assembly member. And in his time in becoming a state assembly member, he served around 80% of his entire state assemblyship outside of the state assembly. So he basically missed every single moment he had to vote on bills, to do anything that actually is beneficial towards the American public. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is simply because there will be an opening in the NY State Assembly if he actually loses this race. If he loses the mayoral race, then an opening will open up in his district. And there is a very big chance that another socialist is going to come into the NY State Assembly and take over his district, which is in large part Astoria, Queens, a big part with a lot of immigrants there. And the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because if we look at Mamdani's main mayoral endorsements and the people who actually endorsed him to become the mayor of New York City, it's really just like dozens of New York State Assembly members. A bunch of New York State Assembly members have endorsed Mamdani to become the next mayor. And that is the concern that I wanted to raise, because at the end of the day, it's not just Mamdani, it's everyone who endorses him too. So it's Kathy Hochul, all of the Democrats in the New York State Assembly, in the New York State Senate that endorsed him. So basically, we have a complete state that is probably one of the most, strongest Democrat strongholds other than California, which is now becoming a total communist state run by communist people who are endorsing a communist candidate for mayor. And, that is the concern that I wanted to bring up. But now, coming closer to what we're seeing with the breaking news of the election, we have seen that the poly market index has predicted that the outcome of the election will be in between Cuomo and Mamdani, where the margin of basically Mamdani winning is about 2%, which is a very small margin. So, Ofer, what are your thoughts? Do you think Cuomo still has a chance in this race, or is his odds to win this race all off?
I've said from the beginning of the race that Mamdani's likely going to win. And I still think that, although the margin is definitely getting closer, we can look at, for instance, the RCP average, and it has been getting closer day after day. And a lot of the polling that shows a large gap between Cuomo and Mamdani isn't recent. It's from like 2 weeks ago, before some of the debate, before we arrived at crunch time. Because when you get closer to elections, in a lot of these races, usually it gets closer because people start getting more active or they think about the consequences. So, for instance, the top tier pollster, Atlas Intel, I was like really a huge supporter of their work in the 2024 election because they did a great job getting the outcomes right. They have the gap between Mamdani and Cuomo at Mamdani plus 5%, which is pretty much around the margin of error. It's a bit more than that, but it does imply that there is still going to be a close race. Ultimately, I do think that Mamdani will edge him out, but it's going to be within a very fine margin, such that obviously, had there not been another candidate in the race and it was a two-head race, then there would be enough for Cuomo to win by a pretty sizable lead. So that's where it's at right now. And like you said, with poly markets, they have like 95% odds for Mamdani to win. And that's because everybody wants to be right. So they're all heading towards him. But even the people that are betting, they think that the average, when you look at how the results are going to end up unfolding, they think that Mamdani is going to win by about 2%, which is within the margin of error, actually. So yeah, you can see how it's definitely getting closer and closer. And what really matters here, if we're going to think about how either side can win, it's going to depend on which demographics turn out in big margins. If you have people from some of these Queens regions, certain white people from higher income brackets, or certain Asians that pull up, or younger people under the age of 30 with college degrees, for instance, like if their turnout is high, then that's going to help Mamdani, obviously. If older black voters go out and vote, or if they did vote during the early voting process, then that's going to be good for Cuomo, obviously. Or if some of the Sliwa voters are now going to sort of change their mind and then switch sides to Cuomo, then that's also going to help. Those are sort of the factors that we're going to be looking at when we analyze who's actually going to win. But,
Yeah.
I've always said, and I'm happy to be wrong about it, but I do think Mamdani still has the edge.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I want to hope that Cuomo is going to win. I don't want a socialist mayor in the biggest city with the most amount of Jews, with the most amount of capitalism really in the world. I do not want a socialist, communist, anti-Semite, jihadist to control that. And on top of that, I mean, we have seen that the polls are really getting tighter and tighter because of those voters that are now changing from a vote to Sliwa. And the reason why is because a lot of people, before the actual election happens, they are going to favor the candidate that they actually want to win, Curtis Sliwa. It happened with everyone. Everyone in the Republican Party, Sid Rosenberg, one of the most influential radio hosts in New York City for 77 WABC, he originally supported Curtis Sliwa. Then eventually, about 2 weeks ago, he de-announced his support for Curtis Sliwa and announced an endorsement towards Cuomo. It goes to show that people first support the candidate who they actually want to win, and then when that candidate is not seen as a viable outcome, and when that candidate is kind of, tossed to the side, then they will support the candidate that is most likely to pose the least amount of threat to them. And that's what we have been seeing. That's why the recent polls now show that Curtis Sliwa is at about 10%, like in between those numbers, which is a very, very, very low amount compared to even last year, where Curtis Sliwa got, I believe it was not last year, last mayoral election with
Yeah.
Eric Adams, where he got like 27% of the vote. So that is a massive decline. It goes to show that his voter base is now transitioning towards a candidate that they actually think is viable and actually poses a not as big as a threat as Mamdani does. So we need more of those Curtis Sliwa voters to transition to Andrew Cuomo. But at the end of the day, a lot of them are not going to make their decision to transition until election day actually comes. That's why all of these, polls that come before election day are not finally are not going to be accurate, because a lot of Curtis Sliwa voters are going to switch at the very last second to a candidate that they think is viable. And whether that's going to be enough to actually make a difference in this race is only time will tell. But what I hope happens is that maybe Curtis Sliwa ends up only securing 7%, 8%, even 9% of the vote to get those, lower those numbers of maybe a few thousand people to vote for Cuomo, and that may actually do it for Cuomo to win the mayoral race.
That's a very good point. The fact that like we can't really quantify how many of the Sliwa voters are actually going to transition over in the last second. Even now, maybe you get into the head of one of them. Maybe they're going to be reconsidering it, and then they switch their votes in the last moments. So that, if it is even a couple of thousand or a couple tens of thousand, could actually have a impact on the race and on the margin of error. And perhaps that would be enough. If the current gap is 5%, like Atlas Intel says, then it would not require that many Sliwa voters to change course. And it also won't require that many people to stay home if they're on the Mamdani side. The problem is, if it's going to be a high turnout election, like the primary was high turnouts within the context of the Democratic primary, that usually favors the Mamdani side, or the people that have that capture the younger voters, because it's well known as an electoral phenomenon that younger voters, they may be outspoken in favor of a certain candidate, but then they don't usually turn out to vote for that particular person. So the higher the young youth turnout is, it usually is better for progressive candidates. So that's also going to be something to watch. But yeah, definitely Sliwa is going to affect it and his voters. Trump, of course, gave his endorsement of Cuomo and did try to sort of put down Sliwa in order to have that sort of desired effect of forcing Republicans over to the Cuomo camp. And Cuomo, of course, he knows that Trump is radioactive in the city. He's not popular for most of the voters because, Cuomo is trying to win over Democratic moderates and people that are left of center, not just people on the Republican side. Because the Republican side in New York City, you have a ceiling of 27%. That's the amount of people that voted for Sliwa in the last mayoral election. So he, of course, denounced Trump and said that he wouldn't cooperate with him when it comes to immigration raids. And he said that actually he's the most equipped to be anti-Trump, more so than Mamdani, because he said that he has experience fighting against him. So that's what Trump gets repaid for when he's trying to be nice to, a political rival of the past. So, yeah, none of these people are angels, but it is a matter of the lesser of two evils. And that's why you do see some of these Sliwa people starting to change their minds in the final moments.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with you. And, just recently I published a piece, I think we already discussed it in Real Clear Politics, about the impact of this young voter base to Mamdani's campaign. I mean, Mamdani secured a volunteer group that was the biggest in campaign history. Over 50,000 people went and rallied for Mamdani, went knocking on doors for Mamdani, got votes for Mamdani. Mamdani came from a name that no one knew in the entire country to a name that now probably every single Republican and Democrat knows around the country. So
Mm.
really what he was able to do is energize the youth, energize the generation that basically doesn't work, goes to college, has summers free, has time to actually go and rally for a candidate. And that is how he ended up winning. I mean, or he ended up being able to even talk about winning. I mean, it's unheard of to have a socialist candidate becoming a mayor of any city, let alone New York City. So we have to, in general, like look at this as a learning opportunity because Mamdani ran a campaign better than probably any politician in history has done. He was able to energize so many people that at the end of the day, no matter how radical his policies, he could have freaking supported Nazis and still people would have supported him because of just how energetic and amazing of a leader he was. He's a really, truly amazing leader. He knows how to energize people. And that's what made him so popular. That's why the youth is voting for him. That's why he has, a record number of voters in the low income, poor communities. It is really because Mamdani understands how to manipulate and get people to get energized about him. And, the Republican Party in general did a really good job in the 2024 election in energizing the base, in energizing people to go out and rally. And Mamdani may have learned from that because at the end of the day, social media, TikTok, what else worked for Mamdani? Knocking on doors. I mean, these are new kind of ways of rallying for a candidate that haven't been used before up until the 2024 election when Donald Trump obviously started using Twitter, TikTok, started going on podcasts, which completely changed his campaign. It's really what made him win in many people's eyes. And Mamdani basically used the same way. So it's was really amazing to watch. And Cuomo just under now understands this. Obviously, it's understandable to anyone that you needed to utilize social media and these new platforms, but he did it too late, and that's why he's losing.
Yeah, there are so many things that Mamdani did well, but also we can't understate how poorly Cuomo did in his management of the campaign. It's almost as if he expected to be handed the mayoralship on a silver platter, as if he's better than the people here. So he spent so much time in the build up to the election, not now, but a couple of months ago, with zero ground game, and he was completely aloof. He was not even in the city, and his social media, like you said, was so poor, and the Instagram followings were so low, complete lack of engagement on Facebook or Twitter. Mamdani just captured the social media entire collective and he was able to game the algorithm. Every single thing he would post would turn into gold immediately. People would just be all over it. And that's just one of many good things on his end that he was able to do to expand his appeal. So the social media game was amazing. The ground game was absolutely amazing, energizing so many young voters, good charisma with people on the street, just being able to connect with them on a human level, speaking to the concerns of people that have college degrees but don't have employment, speaking to the concerns of foreigners that live in New York City. So all of the various interest groups of like minorities that live in the city. So he has like videos where he's talking in Spanish, his videos where he's talking in Arabic. Like he's been able to tap into every single one of these small minority communities in these ethnic enclaves that has very little association with the United States on its own, but cares more about their own insular communities. And he was able to just get all of them unified behind his back. So all of that combined together, it produced one of the best election campaigns that I've seen in modern politics. And it's also the biggest victory for the progressive movement since AOC got elected in 2018 when she beat Joe Crowley. And that was also a massive upset because no one knew of her. And she beat the third most senior Democrat politician in the country. So now we're just seeing a bit of a repeat with that because Andrew Cuomo is a household name. But that's actually harming him in a way because he's getting all this money from Bloomberg and Ackman. And people see that coming from the outside, and it's almost perceived as an attack on the city and support of special interests. So that actually helps Mamdani in a way. So
Yeah,
yeah, if he wins, it will be very similar to what happened with AOC.
very well said. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, his like Cuomo's attack, the reason why people hate him is because he's this career politician that people don't like. He's a career politician that caters towards the rich people, caters towards the funding. Mamdani did the complete opposite. He catered towards regular people because he understood at the end of the day, billionaires are paying for you to get out people to campaign for you. But if you take it another way, if you just go to the people and get people to campaign for you for free, then it looks much better and the actual turnout is much better. And that's what Mamdani did. He was able to do that. So it's amazing. Like, look, I hate Mamdani with a passion. However, what he was able to do is truly amazing. Like no one could possibly expect it from like a generation that is probably the laziest in the world to one that is really the cause of why Mamdani is winning. I mean, it is truly incredible of what he was able to accomplish with that. But again, I mean, Mamdani's biggest influencers, according to him, in an interview, in multiple interviews, has been the people like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Yan Omar. I mean, he states those names. It just goes to show when one of these radical socialist, anti-Semite, jihadist bigots that are racist get elected into power, there's going to be an entire army of others that get elected into power. So Mamdani is just one of many, and that is the threat that he poses. That is why he is such a dangerous candidate. It is not so much of what he's actually going to do in New York City. His impact is not going to be that big. He's maybe going to, somehow create a rent freeze. He will be like Bloomberg. Excuse me, not Bloomberg, Bill de Blasio. However,
Yeah.
his impact is not going to completely, leave the city in crumbles. What it is going to do is allow for other candidates that believe in the same ideology to get elected throughout the country, and eventually for socialism to become the pinnacle of the Democrat Party, which will turn into the Communist Party. And eventually, when Democrats regain power, which it will happen, it has always happened, eventually we will have, instead of a Democrat Party in power, instead of a Joe Biden in power, a communist anti-Semite jihadist in power in the White House. And that is the threat. That is really the threat that Mamdani poses. And, the clear example that I show to this is AOC, Yan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, who Mamdani himself stated as his biggest influencers, who Mamdani himself stated that they are the reason why he is running. Now, look, we have spoken a lot about the New York City mayoral race. It is a very important race. It probably is the most important race in this entire election, but there are other very interesting races. I mean, there's Virginia right now, there's New Jersey right now, where Republicans have a real chance of winning in states that Republicans usually do not win. Now, we can start off with New Jersey, where Jack
Citarelli.
Citarelli,
Yeah.
Jack Citarelli is according to the polls actually gaining a lot of traction. I mean, he's not winning according to the polls, but he is in the margin of error. So, Ofer, what are your thoughts? I mean, this race has been watched by every single Republican. I mean, we have seen people like Scott Presler,
Yeah.
Benny Johnson in New York, in New Jersey, at rallies. I mean, it has been really mobilized. I mean, the Orthodox community in New Jersey has also been mobilized to vote for Jack Citarelli and his team to become the next governor. So, what are your thoughts in general? Does he have a chance?
He does. And it's getting closer and closer, like you said. The polling showed that it's really narrow now. It's on average a difference of about 3.3%. So that's almost on the margin of error, meaning that some of the polls that would be around that margin mean they could indicate that perhaps there's a mistake, perhaps the Democrat Mickey Sherrill is being overestimated very slightly, or it could go the other way, and maybe the gap's a bit larger. Either way, it's very close. And some of the early voting data from the counties that we've received information about does indicate that Citarelli is overperforming the previous GOP performance, whether it was in the presidential election in 2024 or the previous gubernatorial election, which was also rather close. So New Jersey has been trending right for a couple of election seasons now, which is just crazy when you think about it, because northern New Jersey is an extension of the NYC metropolitan area, and you intuitively associates NYC and everything around it as being solidly Democrat. But not only there in northern New Jersey, but also in the suburbs to the south of it, or just in rural New Jersey in the southern part of the state, it's trending right, and it's actually become a really big deal, both on a national level, but more so on the statewide level. And so Ciattarelli's done a great job with this campaign. And the last poll by Alice Intel, and I keep on reminding you of them because they did so well in the 2024 election, it
They were
shows
the only
uh,
accurate poll. Only accurate.
yeah, exactly. They were spot on, and this time they show that the gap between Cheryl to Ciattarelli is only 1%. They have Cheryl at 50 points and Ciattarelli at 49. So that should exemplify for you guys how close it really is. Yes, the Democrat does still have the edge, and that's no surprise. It's no embarrassment if she wins, because it is New Jersey after all. But it is still a massive indication that the midterms may not be as smooth sailing for the Democrats as they hope it would be.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It goes to show that we are now having a situation in the United States where Democrat strongholds like New Jersey, even in New York, they are actually turning more Republican. I mean, I want to remind everyone about the 2022 race in gubernatorial race in New York, where Kathy Hochul and Lee Zeldin faced off. I mean, Lee Zeldin secured 44% of the vote, some number that is like, unheard of for a Republican candidate in a stronghold like New York. It was truly incredible. And now we are seeing this happen at a much higher rate where, the Republican candidate actually has a real chance of winning in New Jersey. So, I mean, it goes to show we are having a real shift in the United States. And something that I find very impressive is that a lot of people have been talking about the midterms in 2026 for Republicans, and how Republicans, since the government is shut down and all of this, all of that, Republicans are going to really do horrible. And because Trump's presidency was so bad in the last year, Republicans are going to do horrible and Democrats are going to, prevail. But this goes to show that no, people are still upset with the Democrats. People still think that Republicans are much better than Democrats in many ways. I mean, they are literally about to send a Republican governor in one of the most Democrat states. I mean, New Jersey also in the election that happened just 1 year ago today, which is, insane to say. I mean, in the election that happened 1 year ago today, New Jersey also did much better for Republicans than anyone expected. I mean, it was a much closer race. So it's very interesting to see. And I mean, next year, when the midterms actually come rolling around, it is possible that we see some of these states with a lot of, strongholds, with a lot of, congressional strongholds that used to be Democrat in New York, in District 3, for example, the district that George Santos actually used to preside over, who now a Democrat runs. These districts can actually change, and these districts can see Republicans leading them, which is very interesting. I mean, Oprah, what do you think about that? Is that a little bit of a stretch, or like, is the Democrat Party really collapsing in these strongholds?
Yeah, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, especially before the results of this election are completed. But yes, whether it be the Senate or the House, both chambers actually have positive indications for the Republicans. And I'm saying this on a day where Trump was actually worried and said that he might do badly in the midterms. But when you look at the facts on the ground, whether it be the redistricting charge in various southern states, and that's pending depending on the results of the court case in Louisiana. But there are a lot of cases right now and a lot of proposals in these states to completely upend the previous districts, and that will greatly benefit Republicans. And Democrats are trying to counter it with Prop 50, which is going to be on the ballots today, actually, in California. So definitely don't vote for Prop 50. Don't allow the redistricting to be taken away from the independent board and brought back to the Democrat run legislature, because that's going to give them all the power they need, and they have a foolproof majority in order to pass through a completely Democrat skewed district map that will give them additional seats and offset any redistricting done by the Republican states. So that's their way to try to offset it, but we'll see how it ends up going. Even in the Senate, though, where Democrats, when you look at demographic trends and essentially the races that are going to be unfolding over the next couple of decades, it's going to be very difficult for them to receive like an major majority, like a massive one that would be filibuster proof or anything of the sort. So Senate's always going to be close. but the Republicans do have the potential to really close the gap in some of these states that would be considered likely blue, likely Democrat, but not fully safe.
Yeah.
And one of them is now New Jersey. So hopefully that transitions from not just being a state that is close on a gubernatorial level, because that's always going to be more local compared to a Senate race, which is something that's actually affecting the entire country and is a part of the federal government. So I hope that a lot of these states where there are close governor races, whether it be New Jersey, and there are also some other states that are Democrat that are seeing these sort of trends. New Mexico is a big one that I've seen get closer in recent years. Even though everybody said due to Hispanics is going to turn like extremely Democrat, it's actually closer than Colorado. So that's a massive trend I've noticed. Areas like Delaware, even, or Connecticut's getting slightly closer. So we're going to have to wait and see, because those areas are going to continue trending in a closer and closer direction. Maybe not in 2026, but we're looking now 10, 20 years into the future. There's going to be demographic shifts over there that help the Republicans actually secure new states as a part of their entire quiver.
Now to move on to an extremely important race that we actually had the opportunity to be a part of, and that is the race in Virginia, where the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general are now all up for grabs, and it's looking like Democrats are in a slight lead for all three of those positions. Now, I'm sure, as our viewers know, we had the opportunity to interview probably one of the most important people in this race and one of the greatest people in this race, John Reed, who is running for lieutenant governor. He's a wonderful candidate, one of the best people personally that I ever interviewed that wants to go into politics. I mean, he has he's a genius, and of course his backgrounds are wonderful. I mean, he just does interviews, on soccer fields. It's really great. I'm being 100% serious. Like, I really love it. I love to see it. So, Ofer, what are your thoughts though on this race in Virginia? I mean, like, it's crazy. Jay Jones right now is leading against the Republican candidate, and Jay Jones is the same guy who literally said that he wanted to see the children of the Republican candidate dead. So, like, what are your thoughts? How the hell is he winning?
Well, ultimately, it's because Virginia has been trending blue, even with Glenn Youngkin, who's the current governor, and he's a Republican. He won, and that was a major upset at the time. And he's term limited, so he can't run again. Maybe he would have won if he ran again. But we're in an off year where generally in off years, Democrats have higher turnout because Democrats in general are more politically engaged, especially older ones. And in Virginia, the older population tends to skew more liberal, especially in Northern Virginia, the Nova suburbs, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, all those areas near DC, they're very liberal, and they are consistent in that. Whether it be the governor, lieutenant governor, or attorney general, they
Yeah,
don't care what the attorney general said. They're voting down the ballot. As the election gets closer and closer, maybe some of the people that were on the fence are now joining Democrat ranks again, because ultimately they're registered Democrats. They don't want to see a Republican become attorney general, or in this case, Miyares is the current attorney general, but he's running for re-election. And unfortunately, he's currently losing in the polls by between 1% to 2%. So it's close, and maybe he'll end up winning. But besides him, none of the others really have a chance based on what we're seeing. For instance, for governor, the current lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears, she's, of course, running against Abigail Spanberger. Spanberger, according to RCP, has a 10% lead in the polling, and even the most recent polls have it around 10%. So
that's
that's
huge.
not close. It's a
Yeah,
huge gap.
that is a
It's
big
not
gap.
close at all.
And I mean,
Yeah.
she is obviously the current lieutenant governor, which already gives her an
Yeah.
advantage over Abigail Spanberger. But so it's really shocking that she's like dragging behind that much. But again, when we actually look at the race, I mean, Democrats in Virginia also have been able to energize a lot of voters. I mean, a lot of people have been focusing on the Republican side on the race in New Jersey, and Virginia kind of has been also thrown off to the side a little bit, at least in what I have experienced. For example, like Scott Pressler, who is a big conservative pundit, he like he focused a lot on the New Jersey race, but I didn't see anything in the Virginia race because it's less popular usually to focus on it, and it's also like less of a chance for Republicans to win there. However, what is very interesting is that the Democrat candidates were also endorsed by Obama. If you watched, he actually had a rally with all of them, with Jay Jones, with um, I forgot the lieutenant governor's name.
Zala Hashmi, that's her
Yeah,
name.
exactly.
Yeah.
She's a former state senator, so uh, you know, Obama actually endorsed these candidates, including Jay Jones. I mean, he shared the stage with Jay Jones. Jay Jones was endorsed by Cory Booker. I mean, how can this happen? Like, how can the mainstream Democrat Party be endorsing a candidate that called for the killing of his opponent and for the killing of the kids of his opponent? Not only that, but this is the same Democrat Party that endorsed Mamdani. This is the same Democrat Party where Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the minority leader of the House for the Democrats, where Cory Booker, where basically all other mainstream Democrats have endorsed Mamdani. And something I find interesting is while Obama decided to share the stage with Jay Jones, he did not endorse Mamdani. He refused to
Yeah.
endorse Mamdani. So that is a little bit shocking. That kind of tells me that there may be some divide in the Democrat Party. But again, right now, Democrats are losing so bad that they can't afford any divide. I mean, if you're on X, you know what's going on in the Republican Party with the divide. It's pretty insane. We have the Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson crowd, and then we have, the Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, a crowd of the Republican Party that's kind of based in Republican values. So we kind of are seeing a divide, and there's a lot of fighting within the Republican Party, but Republicans can afford it right now. Democrats can afford any sort of divide. So seeing that Democrats are choosing to go with the side that is most progressive, most left leaning, most socialist and communist, that is really concerning. It goes to show that, again, this party is turning into a party that is not a Democrat party, but a communist party. And that is the most, takeaway point out of this entire election.
Yeah, I think the reason why Obama went for Jay Jones but not for Mamdani is because they actually are different policy wise. Mamdani is far more left leaning economically, and that's threatening to the major Democrat donors. Up until recently, up until October 7th, Blackman was actually a Democrat, and Bloomberg, he used to be a Republican, and then he switched and he ran as a Democrat in the 2020 primaries. So these are people that were Democrat donors, and they all are backing around Andrew Cuomo because he's center left. He's of course, socially liberal on immigration and on policing and such things like that, but he's not extremely radical, and he's also going to really ensure that the bottom line of Wall Street isn't affected that much. And
Yeah.
Obama is in a very similar camp. He's the one who gave the Wall Street bailouts after the Great Recession to all of these major companies. So he's in bed with them too, and they were massive donors to him in 2008, 2012. He was a massive supporter of the Democrats up past that point, whether it be Hillary Clinton or Biden, and they also received massive donations from all of these Democrat coastal elites, whether they be from the NYC side of things or from Silicon Valley. Only recently has Silicon Valley really transitioned towards being a more Republican stronghold, and that was in the 2024 election. So Mamdani represents opposition to that for the first time, and that's why Obama saw him as a threat. And there is a bit of a divide now between the progressives, the actual progressives like Mamdani and Graham Plattner in Maine, who's running. And those people are just hated and despised by the donor class and by the establishment Democrats, versus people like Jay Jones, who, even though he's evil objectively, he's still a Democrat partisan. He's a hack. Like, he'll just say anything that they tell him
Yeah.
to say at the party leadership. He doesn't have any real views of his own. He just hates the other side, but he's not actually really far left when it comes to like his economic beliefs or anything of the sort. He's very left wing when it comes to policing, though, and that's a problem. And it shows you guys what the
Yeah, for
Democrats
attorney
are willing
general,
to
it's a
tolerate.
pretty bad thing to
Yeah,
have.
that's insanely bad for an attorney general. He thought that getting rid of qualified immunity is worth it, even if it means that more cops will die. He said that's a good thing. He doesn't care about it. He's ambivalent. So that shows you guys what Democrats from the establishment are willing to tolerate. They're not willing to tolerate things that will hurt their bottom line, but they're willing to tolerate regular people not having police on the streets to save them.
Crazy.
So their values are completely out of sync.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I mean, it is crazy how this is the party. Like, it came from a party, the Democrat Party, which actually could have been supported. Like, I understood how people could support, I don't know, the Democrat Party in 2012, 2013, even before that. I mean, Obama 2012 race is really, I think, the turning point of the Democrat Party. However, like, it used to be supportive. Like, I could understand why people support Democrats. Now you are literally supporting a party that just endorsed Mamdani for mayor. You are supporting a anti-Semitic, anti-American party. So I don't understand how people can vote for this. I mean, how can people vote for Democrats? I don't understand. And that's why we are going to see a divide in the Democrat Party eventually, with people who are common sense, like, I don't know, Scott Fetterman, either becoming an independent or basically becoming an independent without saying it. I mean, Scott Fetterman is I mean, the complete opposite of any other Democrat that there is. However, we do see mainstream Democrats like Kathy Hochul again endorsing this socialist policy. So it's going to be really interesting to see the future of the Democrat Party. But as of now, I could tell you one thing, and that this is going to hurt the American people a lot, but Republicans are going to win because of it. Democrats are never going to win on a platform of socialism other than in this one case until people start realizing that socialism doesn't work, which is going to happen very soon. But Ofer, I mean, our last point for today, I think, is important to cover the local races in a bunch of states, liberal and not liberal states, where we see candidates, whether it's running for a county legislator, county executive, even in Nassau County, which is this wonderful, beautiful county on Long Island, we see Bruce Blakeman has just been endorsed by Donald Trump. So that's a big move. I mean, these are small races, but how important are they to American success? Like, I mean, how important is a county in, I don't know, Indiana to American success? Should people be really going out and vote for that? Like, how is it important?
Uh, Unfortunately, when I look at the policies of Democrats versus Republicans on a county level, especially when you're looking at an executive or somebody in the legislature, they're almost always in sync because they're not radical towards either end. They're usually extremely moderating forces. They care more about community engagement. So the way in which they measure success is in terms of how effective they are
Yeah.
or in terms of how willing they are to get some sort of proposition passed. But in terms of the fundamental ideology and what they want to achieve, ideally, they're usually on the same page. So I actually don't think that it's as important as some people make it out to be to vote in these local elections. Like, of course, you should still be looking through the policies and you should agree with whoever aligns with you more and go out to vote for them because even if it's a marginal improvement, it's such a small affair to just go out and cast a ballot for them. So yeah, still do it, but I think that it shouldn't be taken out of proportion. There are going to be elections though in Supreme Court in Wisconsin and
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Those actually are really big deals, and we can't stress it enough in those areas. And also in
They
California, yeah,
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, I don't mean to cut you off, but in Pennsylvania, we
yeah,
have
yeah.
seen that literally there has been over $9 million invested in just YouTube ads for the Supreme Court race. So it's really big. And Wisconsin, they are always getting elected. I mean, that Supreme Court, for some reason, there's every other like day there's an election. I mean, we just saw like a few months ago how Elon Musk paid people to go out and vote in Wisconsin, how Donald Trump was motivating people. So those are really, really important races that are going to have massive impacts on the federal level. But your county legislator, for example, I mean, yes, it's very, very important for you to go out and vote, and you have a civic duty to vote. However, it is not anywhere near as important as people in, I don't know, New York City to go out and vote. So just because your friends in the middle of nowhere are choosing not to vote, which they shouldn't be doing, but it's fine if they do, I guess. That doesn't mean that you living in a really important stronghold or I don't know, in New Jersey, for example, can choose not to vote, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so as we're just gonna finish off with this, there's an election, primary election in Texas' 18th congressional district because the representative there, the Democrat, passed away, and there's actually like 6 Democrats running there and 1 Republican.
Yeah.
But if nobody gets over 50%, then it goes to a runoff. So it doesn't really matter. It's
Oh, it
going to
does
be
go. Oh,
yeah, it goes to a runoff afterwards. So the Democrats going to win, but it is still kind of funny to see all of them running at once
yeah.
here.
I thought, we talked about it before. I thought
Yeah,
it now, since it's a runoff, this can't happen, but it would be very funny to see, the Democrats, each of them getting like 15% and then the
yeah,
Republican getting like 20 or something. That would be like amazing. But yeah. It's
yeah.
a very big Democrat stronghold. I mean, this race is a joke. So, and the Republican candidate is also a joke. Like, I'm sorry to whoever she is. She's absolutely unqualified. No offense to her,
She's
but
Miss Venezuela, I think.
yeah,
Miss
yeah, she
Venezuela
was.
running in America. This makes sense.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's one way to do it.
So, by the way, besides that, you have the lower chambers in Virginia and New Jersey with
Mhm.
elections being there. So, if you want if the Democrats going to win in either of the states, at the very least, have a legislature that's Republican, so they can
Which is
stop them.
very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So make sure
And
to
all
vote
of
in
these
those as well.
Proposition 15, California, very important
Yeah.
also. Like, look, if you are choosing not to vote because you don't think it's not an important election, it most likely is an important election because this election in particular, in many states that usually don't have like a chance of the Republican Party winning, like New Jersey, for example, this is probably the most important election of in the last decade. Look, I could understand not voting for Donald Trump if you live in New Jersey and you're a Republican because you just think that Donald Trump would never win New Jersey. But now is the chance to actually switch that. And now is the chance to get the Republicans back on the ballot and actually seriously get the Republicans to win in New Jersey. That's why you have to vote. And for every single state that is right now having a chamber of whether it's Senate, House, or representative, whatever you call it in those states. Some are assembly members. If you have an assembly member that is looking to get elected, you have to vote there. I know in Idaho, I believe that there is also a chamber election there. So it's going to be interesting to see. But those are very important elections that people forget to actually vote for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to decide the fate of the states if a Democrat wins, because if they have a just clean break, they can do whatever they want, then they're going to pass through the agendas they've been planning in Virginia and New Jersey for the past couple of years. So definitely go out to vote, whether you're in New York City, in Virginia, in New Jersey, or any other one of these states where they have local elections, but especially in California for Prop 50. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to be live today, later today, to actually go over the election results as soon as they happen. I will be live. And yeah, thank you guys for watching and thank you for all the support. We really appreciate it. We cannot wait until this election. I mean, election day is my favorite day of the year, so can't wait to see. Thank you guys, and the Patriot Perspective will be back tomorrow.